check things out. If you, I mean, if you just set that there while you're talking, it's probably close enough.
Okay.
Honestly, I can put the stick on it if you want. Put the stick on it.
Oh yeah, that's what that clip is for. I get it.
There's a there now.
What is that?
Tiny thing. Jigger. You gotta put the.
Yeah, you got it. You got it.
Like that.
A little spring. Weird. Mike. You got audio?
Yeah. No, we got. You're actually playing loud. Like you're jumping up into the yellow. Like
Okay.
I mean, if you just leave it right here,
Yeah.
it's picking up our conversation.
Excellent. All right, we'll get started in a couple minutes. I suppose the trick is if we want house mic, we got house mic here. Yeah, house mic. Little low.
I can hear that conversation.
Okay. Yep. Anything else? I think we're good. This one?
Nice if that other one gets charged, we could put that. It'd be nice to put that one on. Put that one on the stick.
Well, I think the lapel, somebody can clip it to their shirt, and then if they want to do house mic, they probably don't want to hold two mics.
Yeah.
But both of these are getting picked up, so we can do either.
This is just the receiver.
Oh,
That's the microphone.
I knew that. Aha.
We can let that one charge.
It's blinking. What does it mean?
Bad user interface.
It's either good or it's bad.
So I didn't do a plug me because it isn't really a plug me.
Yeah,
At some point, could somebody talk about alt space VR?
sure. I'll bring it up.
I was just totally shocked.
Yeah.
And it was, I think, a retweet from you.
Okay.
You know, it was like, oh, fuck.
Yeah,
And we were just talking about whether headsets will exist a few years from now.
they will.
He's saying the reason they'll exist are all those kids who killed alt space VR.
Yep, that's true.
So good to see you. Thanks for doing this.
Yeah.
Did you find out there was a mail problem, or was it just people being hokey about replying?
The timing is really strange now because it takes 5.5 days for us to send the emails because of the quotas that they have on free Eventbrite. Yeah, there's our alt space notice. Yeah, that's super screwy. Like the best, like we gotta send out Charles's event. I'm like, well, 2 out of 6 people will receive it before the event begins. The other 4 will receive it after the event begins. It's weird. We gotta figure that out and write it on a calendar. Or in the bathroom.
here for the speaker thing, huh? Do like a hang it this way type of thing?
How do you read the battery power level?
Through the app or your phone?
Okay.
There's a road app you can get from your computer, but I don't. Maybe there's a pattern to it. I don't know.
No problem. We'll just keep an eye on the volume meter. Hello, hello, hello. Hello, hello. We're going to get started. If you'd like to take your seats, please. We'll start with this guy. All right, there's a secret to turning them on. I think this one's on now. Hello, hello, hello. How's this look? Picture, picture?
Yep. Yeah, I got it.
Excellent. You have to hold it for a while.
Yeah.
And here's a cable here's another cable if we want to charge it. All right. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for coming. After a long holiday break, we're back live in person at REM 5. Thanks, Matt. Thanks, REM 5. Thanks, REM 5. And you are at the VR and HCI monthly meeting. Monthly every month, except November and December, because we meet on the fourth Wednesday of the month. We've got 3 different presentations, 2 kind of short things, and then RJ is giving our main talk. And right here at the beginning, we want to just point out our meetings are open to everyone. They're inclusive. If you have any issues, please get in touch with us. And if you want to read about our event policy, there it is. IGDA TC is our parent organization, and it's entirely volunteer run. So all these awesome people make this stuff happen, and more specifically this meeting, these 2 awesome people make it happen, Zach Wendt and David Mann. We also have volunteers that are not on the board that run other events or help out with other events. So if you have good ideas and you're interested in helping out, we always are looking for people that are willing to throw in a little bit of work. This is our regular schedule. The traditional game dev IGDA TC meeting is always on the 2nd Wednesday of the month. This VR and HCI meeting you're at is on the 4th Wednesday. And in between, we have what we call Twin Cities Playtest. And that's pretty much always been online, and just a way to test out your games, playtest other people's games, have good discussions about design, mechanics, real specific things. But who's got the sharp eyes? Who can spot something special on this slide here that's been the same every month for a couple of years? There is a change. You're taking too long. This part. Oh, I missed this part. IGDA TC is also going back to in-person meetings. We're hosted at the Nerdery for our next meeting.
No way.
Way. Whoa.
The new Nerdery.
The new Nerdery is very close to Southdale. It's in Edina on France Ave. And it's pretty.
Joe Sensor's after, right?
Joe Sensor's is been destroyed.
Parking lot of Joe Sensor. Joe Sensor is a parking ramp for
Yeah.
dealer.
That is the most important thing, is where do you drink after the meeting. There's a strong contender actually just across France Ave. It's called like Tavern 56, 46, something like that. We'll get it all figured out. We'll get it all locked down. There will be a place to drink after the meeting. So be excited. Along with all this in-personness, happy to announce, and we'll talk about this in a little more detail, that right here. We have an in-person site for the Global Game Jam, which is coming up here in a week and a half. So for the last 2 years, we've had online only, and this year we're going back to having an in-person option in addition to online. So it's at Noble Robot, which is, what do you call that, northeast, right by Surdix, just across the river here in Minneapolis. And we'll talk about that in more detail. And then after that concludes, we'll have kind of postmortems like we always do at the Nerdery this year. So that's very exciting. Along with those announcements, oops, I'm adjusting the slide. Let's move on. We are part of the national, I guess, International Game Developers Association. If you happen to sign up for that membership, be sure to mention the Twin Cities chapter. We get a little bit of credit and kickback. Totally not required, though, to attend our meetings. And then anybody in the audience with a local plug, Scott, yours wasn't exactly a plug, but you definitely wanted to let the world know that. Okay, so one of the bits of news, well, before we do that, any plugs, any other upcoming events anybody wants to announce for the group?
Not a plug, but I got a project to talk about.
Sure. Way to step it from the mic, sir.
Yeah.
Wow.
Visual aid.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah, so like I said-
Talk here, and I'll point this at you as well.
Thank you. Double mic.
Yep.
A few years ago when we were doing COVID and we were meeting in Altspace, rest in peace, by the way. On
Spoiler.
Altspace.
Spoiler.
Then I played a video. So years ago, I was listening to a podcast with this guy named Dave Bossert, who was a Disney animator. I worked on a ton of films that we've all seen. And he left Disney and became a historian and started writing all these books. Anyway, so I was listening to him on a podcast, and he talked about this 3D photography book that he was working on. And so I emailed him and said, I've done a lot of 3D photography. I'd be happy to help with you on your book. So he emailed back, and so we've been working together since then. So we did a book on 3D Disneyland that came out a few years ago. And then the next one was this one, which is 3D National Parks. And so what Dave did was he sourced all these stereo cards from the 1800s, sent them all to me. And what was cool about this is that we were taking a family trip to Yellowstone at the same time that we were working on this book. And so I was able to go to some of those same exact spots and take photos, like stereo photos now of the exact same places. And it was really interesting because some of them were really hard to get to. And so you kind of imagine somebody in the 1800s with like a double camera, and one of them there wasn't even a great place to stand, but somebody had lugged a thing up there. And it's kind of a neat process to work on. There's about 100 photos in here that are all old stereo cards that we converted. And what's crazy about the conversion process is that you've restored old photos before, like we've all restored these photos, but when you restore a left and a right eye, you've got to do it so that it works stereoscopically. So you restore one side, and then the other side has scratches in a different place, and if you just clean them both up, then you end up with all these like little flickering elements as well. Sometimes you've got scratches or a burn mark or a missing part, you've got to clone it, or like a flaw with the old photographs. You would clone one side over to the other side, and then you have to position that in 3D space so it works correctly. And then the way that I'd work on this is convert the stereo card into auto align it, bring it into Photoshop, and then just cross my eyes the whole time I'm editing the photo. So I'm just sitting there with my eyes crossed, so I can make an edit here, make an edit here, and then you bring it back in, do the anaglyph, bring it back into Photoshop. So it took a while for each one of these photos to get restored, and that's it. And so now the next one we're working on now is one on World War I. So, yeah.
So you went to these parks while this was you went to Disney while you were doing the Disney.
Yeah.
So are you going to World War I?
Yeah. So I'm packing it up, guys. It's been cool, and I'm gonna go back in time.
I think we need a picture of you on the back.
I know. Well, it's actually, yeah, never say never. I mean, it'd be cool to go to Europe and see some of those same spots. But yeah, the thing about the World War I photos, there's a lot of photos on the battlefield. There's like skeletons. It's crazy the kind of stuff that they would document. And so the material is very different, and it's a lot more interesting, I think, than trees and waterfalls and things like that, which are really similar from park to park. But they're also a lot harder photos to work on because they've got more detail in them, and exposures are different because there's people in the shot, so the photographer is just dealing with what they can deal with at the time, you know, to get these shots with people in them.
How big was the gear back?
I'm thinking it was like this with a couple of boxes, but the big deal was the stabilization. So you had to have a tripod that could stabilize this stuff. So the cameras weren't light, but then the tripods and everything else, where I'm using two cameras that are paired together and handheld, and I'm taking a dozen or 20 shots of the same location, processing them all, and then I've got the best one, where they got one shot at it, and that was, you know.
And this was wildly popular.
Yeah.
At that time.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
Farmhouses in Nebraska.
Yeah.
The sod houses in Nebraska would have one of these tools that you could stick these things.
Yeah, so there's a whole section on the cameras
Yeah.
and stereoscopes and like different ways they would view them.
Right, but
Yeah.
the viewing stuff was, unlike VR headsets, were very.
Yeah, exactly. So it's kind of fun to work on these old school VR, kind of bringing them forward and modernizing them, and dealing with the mistakes that they had to deal with, and going, okay, how do we clean this up or align it? And like sometimes the cards are warped when they get scanned, and so then you bring that into stereo, and what happens is the subject will look fine, but the ceiling is leaning forward, or the floor is warped backwards or something, and so stereoscopically, it just looks really funny, and so there's a lot of like skewing and fakery involved to make it look as close to the original as it can be without digitizing it or whatever. So
Congratulations.
yeah, thanks. It's fun. It's a side project and just something that we.
Where does one get this book and the Disney book?
You can go to Old Mill Press, oldmillpress.com.
Okay.
Is his website. Yeah. So the World War I book, these things take forever. So we'll finish these photos this year. I think the book will come out in 2024, and then there's some museum installation stuff that they're talking about. Maybe some like speaking opportunities to go to different places and talk about how these books are put together. So
Cool.
yeah, so it's fun. That's it.
Thanks. That's a tough act to follow. Anybody? Going, gone. We're always looking for speakers. If something cool happening locally is ideal. We love to have in person. It doesn't have to be you. You can throw somebody else under the bus. I'm real easy to work with. And without further ado, we'll move on. And first up on the schedule, I think it's me, actually. Let's see. Indeed. The Global Game Jam. I guess show of hands, and then I'll relay to the audience. How many people have participated in Global Game Jam, either developer or just checking it out? Schaefer. So we've got about 5-6 people in the room that will admit to it. It's something we started doing here. Who remembers the year? 2012, I want to say. There's a fun way to check. You just type in your Global Game Jam username, and one of the neat things about it is they do have this history. Despite different organizers kind of taking it over every year, there is a fairly robust persistence of projects between years. So yeah, 2012 was the first time IGDA Twin Cities was involved, and hopefully the art is still existing on the link here. It's a great place to form up and make a game. That's sort of the premise, but it's also a great place to show up and do a tutorial and learn. I used Unity for the first time here in 2012, and I had never touched it before, and it was scary. It was full of menus, but eventually there was some programming that I could help out with. Well, I've seen this site work in the past. Sometimes it's there. But it's neat to kind of see the history and how things progress. One of the big tropes that certainly has served us well locally is the fact that you've got all these people in this building or online, as is the case the past couple of years, is this ready pool of feedback and testers. So something that's not really very easy to do as a on your own project would be local multiplayer, shared screen multiplayer. Becomes a very big trope for these events because you just turn around and hand somebody a joystick and they take it and start playing your game. So much so that we actually did a compilation thing here in 2014 with 4 different local multiplayer things in the same team in the same project. One was a lot more fun than the rest, but that's how it goes. We had a good variety of there. And then obviously me being the VR guy, that's Ryan Foss dodging a plate thrown by a dwarf inside a hobbit hole back in 2015. And yeah, and the other good thing, especially when you're talking about VR and some of these things that we do here, is it's a really good time to use some weird hardware and get people to test it out, because that's hard to do in real life, because we have these play parties and these post-mortem sessions. And obviously, if it's something that you can bring to the event, you'll have people there to try it out. So this project involved a motion capture suit. Not that we play tested people getting in and out of a motion capture suit, but it was sure exciting for a weekend to have that. This one was reflashing Vive controllers so that we could have like 8 or 10 people participating at once in a VR thing, and then really pushing the bounds of what could be tracked in terms of a large play space. So all those people, they're all fish holding a Vive controller, harassing a diver in a VR headset. That was pretty unsuccessful. You really want the visuals for VR and motion captured gameplay. A lot of divers won't relay them to you very well. Just as another quick example, for this year, we showed up with a bunch of VR gear and didn't know what we're doing, and then Kyle said, well, I brought my, my training sword, and my dad machined me this aluminum mount for a Vive tracker, so that became the whole project. You just kind of go with the flow, and because it is a time-limited thing, it's one weekend, it's 48 hours. If you actually hit a roadblock, you can try to fix it for a few hours, and then you have to go around it, and that will affect your game design, and that's part of the magic of the whole thing. You end up with these kind of crazy things. I don't even remember the flow for this. I think because we had no artists, probably, we ended up with a noodle-based character. And obviously the sword was the most important thing we were working on. I tried feed tracking, and there is a limit to how much Bluetooth devices you want in one room at a time at a game jam. And then we had to have some enemies, and Ryan found the guys from Toy Story somewhere, and so we were slicing them up. So really the concept's a little bit inconsequential. It's really about this project and this creative process. This one started, I don't think there's a photo necessarily. This started from, Zach noticed you can attach controllers to your Oculus Quest, like an elephant trunk. And that was gonna be the thing until we eventually learned that it was more fun to have multiple elephant trunks and just make this super awkward thing. And you know, at 2 a.m., the boxes gained underwear. I don't remember why. I had no clue. All the flesh-toned humans had to eventually turn green and gray because that's important. And it's just a thing. And then you let people try it, and then they appreciate your thing, and it's a lot of fun. And then if you can't be there in person, like the last 2 years have been online, and that's done a pretty great job of recreating the spirit of it, of just collaborating in a space and screwing around. If you're a developer, you don't. So this is Rec Room, and as you're trying to debug the final parts of your actual gameplay, like it's impossible. You can't. You kill yourself trying. But getting to that 80% mark was a lot of fun, and then it was kind of pure frustration. And then likewise here in the meta, what do we call this thing? Horizon Worlds. You get to a certain point and then you can't really go farther easily, but just you can see just kind of screwing around in there, even just the editor tools in multiplayer VR are a good time.
I think our big challenge while I was there was physics.
Yep, we wanted more physics than it was willing to do. Someone showed us the API that sleeps and wakes up the physics, so we were able to save levels that had more physics than the servers were willing to run, and then it got a little unstable after that point. But there's a lot going on there. And of course, .eth, because I forget why. Going with the trends. So for this year, it's a special call out. Paul's here. We're like, hey, Quest Pro. Oh yeah, there's a few of those in the world. There's a new API for shared spatial anchors that only runs on Quest Pro. Oh, so you need 2 Quest Pros in the same room physically. Like, Game Jam. So anybody's got a Quest Pro, sign up for Game Jam. Then we'll have 3 Quest Pros. If you don't, we'll be here in February, figure out a way to demo it to you guys. So we'll give it a good shakedown and see if it's worth a dang. And they do say that API is going to come to Quest 2 eventually. In terms of what Global Game Jam is, the global part is truly global. It's the largest game jam in the world. They have this terrible map that you're like, wait, what? There's one site in Europe. No, wait, there's one site in California. Yeah, I got to get a real mouse here. As you zoom in, those little dots move around and start to do what you'd expect them to do.
Clustering's hard.
It is. It's not this hard though. There's 2 in Minnesota? What?
Further, it might break up more.
Like, who is this? There's 2. This is us, and this is Valerie Labs. Who's that? That's awesome. They're going to get invited to our post-mortem at the Nerdery. Yeah. Cool. Does this come up, David, on our Slack?
Oh, look, we're in the United States.
Yes.
I'm going to their one.
Okay. See ya. And then we have an online component, which we've been doing for the last 2 years. We've partnered with Amber Waves of Games because they have been running online game jams for 5 years, more, but very often, and they're very good at it. So it's been a great help to get them on board. We'll do some kind of a joint thing at the Nerdery. It'll be streamed on YouTube and in person for the people that can be there.
Is there any chance that Valerie Labs has anything to do with the Nerdery?
I don't know. I just saw them just now.
It's very close to where the new Nerdery.
I mean, it could. And then historically, just kind of these phenomenal numbers, thousands and thousands of people. And until this year, it's been actually very, well, maybe with the COVID stuff, it became a little bit less choreographed, but the whole concept is it's a 48-hour jam. You start 5 p.m.-ish on your local time zone. So the fun part is it starts like in Fiji, and then the last one kicks off in Hawaii nearly a day later. And they're all kind of synchronized, and they upload their games and break the servers at the end of their 48 hours. In principle, it's an open source thing. They encourage you to have everything to recreate the project uploaded. In practice, a portion of the games do, and a portion of those you would actually want to look at their project. But it's really about this creative process. And not to say it's only video games. We've, of course, got a big focus on VR and AR stuff here, but we've had some really amazing board games come out of it. And actually, I don't remember what year it was, first or second year, there was a board game that kept showing up at all of our after parties called Sapro Biont. Does anybody remember that one? It was just super impressive because it was a print and play as a single PDF. You print it out and you get a bunch of tokens, Legos or what have you. And it was 3 different teams with completely different rules, yet somehow it was balanced. And we asked them about it, and they said, yeah, we play tested like 50 times during that weekend, and also this is what we do for a job, we make games. So that's how you accomplish that. So yeah, I encourage you, if you have a team in mind, more the spirit of it is you form teams there. There'll be kind of a team-making exercise. Or you just want to learn and you want that environment to bounce questions off or just get encouragement. We've had more people than me show up and do their first Unity project or their first whatever, Unreal project and that kind of stuff. But there won't be a lot of Unreal there. Sorry. There should be, but it's just so rare. Any quick questions on that? Last I checked, I'll pop back in there, but last I checked there was like 7 spots open on the live thing, and of course an unlimited amount for the Discord-based event. And if you want to participate in either, you go to this event right here, and there's 2 separate tickets. Oh, well, there you go. Eventbrite's broken, or possibly my internet. Wait for it. There's 2 separate tickets, one to attend in person at Noble Robot. And if you are going to attend in person, be sure to read up on kind of the COVID plan, just to kind of appease the most people. The plan is you take a home test the day of, and if it says you're negative, you show a photo and you go in the building. If you feel sick, you leave the building. That's kind of the happy medium we're running with for that. But when you go to grab a ticket, it'll ask if you want to be in person or online. Yep, 7 remaining still. So there you are. All right, well, moving on, maybe before we switch over to Matt, who was actually at CES as an exhibitor. There's a little bit of news got brought up. During this COVID time, we've met in Altspace many times. And sad to say, although it's due, Altspace is no more as of early March. Microsoft did a pretty sizable layoff. They say like 5% of the workforce. And it gutted their VR and AR teams pretty hard. So Altspace is finally dead for real, not zombified like it's been for a little while. And people that work with the MRTK, the Mixed Reality Toolkit, that whole team is gone from Microsoft, but it is open source. And actually it started outside of Microsoft. There weren't too many people working on it, but the HoloLens Toolkit became MRTK the year where Microsoft wanted to release VR headsets and not call them VR and call them mixed reality. But that's sad. And then StereoKit, which was really a one-man show, which is a really interesting API for programmers that don't want to learn Unity. It's a really effective way to do VR projects. He's actually excited. He said he's just going to work on it full-time for a while. So it's going to go faster. But along with that, people think HoloLens team is much smaller now, and the mixed reality headsets, which they haven't really shown a lot of features coming out, but I'm sure they had to do support things to keep them going with the Windows updates. So we'll see what happens to that in the near future to both of those. But yeah, anything else on the Microsoft stuff that I missed?
They released an update today.
Of what?
Just the preview MRTK 3.
Oh, good.
Preview 14, the pro bono update.
Good. Yeah. So MRTK just did a release. One of the saddest things about this timing was they were about to have a 1.0 of this kind of major revision of the framework. So that's a good sign that people still have their heart in it and they're still pushing it forward. And that's the good thing about being open source, that nobody can kind of depth charge the whole thing by themselves. But okay, what else we got going on here? Yeah, let's just switch over to Matt. You gonna work your way up here. Oh yeah, are you gonna talk about Vive XR? Vive XR Elite?
Yes, I have a slide.
Okay, excellent. And I have a smidge of video that you can play in the background if you like to. So yeah, let's switch over to Matt.
Go this way, it might record.
Yeah, good luck. You can click this one on somewhere. It doesn't have to be close to your face. And you can either touch and tap or use the mouse.
All right.
What you can't do is click and drag on here. So the battery's a little bit thicker than it should be.
Got it. All right.
Who are you?
I have a slide for that. I'm Matt, and I am an alcoholic, also VR-aholic, I guess. So I was at CES for a weird reason, but I turned it into my advantage. I was there for technical support for one of our clients, so I was in the Caterpillar CES booth for the entire week, I guess. I was there from like Tuesday to Monday. I think this is the first time CES has been over a weekend also, like ever. So it's kind of interesting to see like the dynamic of like people came and then left. So like the last 2 days were like basically dead. Saturday was a little bit busier than I was expecting, but Sunday was like everyone was gone. So that was the day I walked around and actually did stuff because there was a terrifying amount of people there. So it was kind of scary. We did basically, Caterpillar was in the EV automation wing of CES, and this mining dump truck, which is the smallest one they make, 2.5 stories tall, it can like move 100 tons, is fully autonomous. So basically, it can be remote piloted, or it can actually drive itself around like a mining site. And then, so they were showing off this next to, the booth right next to them was Mercedes, and Mercedes was showing off this like, you know, maybe one, it's a fictitious car. It wasn't really a car, it was like a show car. There was just enough that they could roll it into the showroom and just put it there. And this truck drove itself in through one of the doors while they were putting their stuff together, so it's kind of fun. It did also have to be cut apart and welded back together on the showroom floor because it was too big to fit through the doors on the showroom. But those 2 iPads right there were what I was there for. We did like an AR experience where you basically held up an iPad and had an overlay of AR content on top of the truck. You could actually go up to the top of the truck via the staircase there, and there were 4 iPads in the back of the box, so you could look down over all the other humans wandering around this wing of CES and kind of see what's going on. So it's kind of entertaining.
Was it image tracking?
Yep. So he was using like LiDAR, and it's basically using all of the tracking on the iPad, basically. We were also 3 sides of the booth were just IR bombarded by various LiDAR companies who were like live mapping LiDAR of the showroom floor. And pro tip, it doesn't work so hot when your iPad Pro is being bombarded by 5 directions of other people's LiDAR. But anyway, so that's why I was there. I was mostly hiding in a broom closet for several days, just waiting for things to go wrong, and nothing went wrong. So, and then eventually I got to wander around. So, disclaimer, anyone who didn't clean their hardware, I didn't put any of it on my head, so, or body or anything, and it was almost everyone. So, with the exception of Sony, they were actually really good. They had the UV chambers, and they were cleaning all the headsets in between every user, but one of the worst offenders was Ultra Haptics, the Lynx R1. I watched the guy take it off the person who was demoing his head and put it on his head and like adjust it and then put it back on the guy's head. And I was like, oh, yeah, I'm not gonna do that. But
this is from a man who's done more than his share of.
yeah. And I will say, I'll caveat the Lynx with that they didn't have the VR the blocker on, so it wasn't literally touching their face exactly, but they were still breathing and spitting on it while they were, you know, had it on their skull, so it was still terrifying. But so that was like, I was going there. Zach wanted me to get some pictures and take a look at it, and I was, like I said, I was horrified by their cleaning methods. But I did watch people interact with it and kind of use it, so I got an idea of what it's like. They had like a mirror out to a TV, so you could see kind of what was going on, and the content that was on it was garbage. So you could tell that they were just trying to demo it, but they didn't really have good content, essentially, to do that. They did have a Pico Neo right next to it that they were also running, because that has a module that has lead motion hand tracking, and they were demoing that, and that had really good content. So it was kind of interesting to see the difference between that and those 2 things. But they did have a demo of their 3DI, which I'm kind of interested in, because it's like the leap motion hand tracker, except it's designed to be used with like kiosks. So it has like the right FOV, and it has the good stuff from the new version, the Gemini version of leap motion. But then they have a bunch of SDKs that they wrote that do like hand tracking from like a 90-degree angle, so you can like pretend to click on things on a screen without actually touching it. So it's kind of like in a like don't want to touch things world. is kind of interesting because it actually gives you a full hand model, and then you can basically, you know, it has like a set of UI plugins. It's just basically that let you like do a carousel you can slide through and buttons you can click and things like that. So they had a bunch of demos where there's like a ball pit, and you could wave your hands through it, and all the balls would fly away, and it would reveal something. So they weren't sure what they were doing with it, but they were just trying to like provide the technology as like an example for other people to do things. I'm surprised they didn't have anything else more interesting with it, but it seemed like, if you could tell from their booth, it was kind of like a few things standing up and a couple screens. So they were in like the main show floor. So they were in like the main consumer electronics hall, which is it was like CES East, I think, East or South, one of those two. And they had like Microsoft and bHaptics and all these things around them, but they were just, you know, were demoing like a few things. But
Did they have an ultrasonic?
I finally got to try one. All right. And I don't know how much it costs. They wouldn't say. And I've seen various things online where it's like, maybe it's $2,700, maybe it's $500. I don't know. But this is actually a photo of the Gen 1. And the ones they had there were newer ones. And they had a super wide one. But it was really cool. Like you could, again, it's using the Leap Motion hand tracker. So you get your hand 3D model, and you can move your hand around. And it was able to, like, as you move your hand across, it could like shape ultrasonic sound waves and like give you the feeling like there's a ball in your hand, or there's like a beam pulsing along from the tips of your fingers to your palm, that kind of stuff. It was pretty neat. So you could like click on something and get like real feedback even though you're not actually touching anything. That was pretty cool. It was the first time it's been like 5 years I've been trying to like find one, figure out if it could buy it, and we can't really, and then finding a place where you could actually try one. But they had 3 different ones set up. One of the demos was kind of broken, but it was still pretty cool. And then this is they didn't have this for the Neo 4, so they were only showing the Pico Neo 3. I have no idea how much this costs because there's like a third party that sells it or something, so you have to like click through and make an account and log in, and then you fill out like a credit report, and then they tell you if they can afford it or not. So that was using the same software that would be on the Lynx, or if you were to buy the stereo IR module and use it on your own hardware. Also the Varo uses that as well, the same tracking software. I waited a little bit in line. Again, there's so many people. I did not actually get a chance to test it. I saw it in person. Did not have it on my skull, so I can't give any feedback on that. I think it's interesting. I don't know, like, various people probably share my opinion in here, maybe even RJ, that I'm just terrified of anything that HTC makes at this point because they have a bad track record. Like the Vive was amazing, and then it's just like been slowly going downhill, and then it just kind of plateaued, and it's just kind of mediocre at this point. But we'll see. It could be interesting. It's same-ish price point as Quest Pro. Similar hardware and form factor. But
Anybody here order one?
Is this a wireless?
it is a standalone. Yeah.
Is it like the upgrade of the Focus?
It's Quest. Yeah. Well, it's Quest Pro. It has eye tracking and diameter, so you don't need to use glasses.
Well, I'm wondering, is it like we got to try that. We bought a couple of Focus, but we didn't like it.
Yeah.
It's not. I'm just wondering if it's that same thing or.
I think it's like the one they have that connects to your phone, the standalone,
Yep.
because it looks like the smaller.
The Flow.
The Vive Flow out there.
The Flow, the bug-eyed one.
Yeah.
It's
But
like the
now
Flow
it has
and
the chip
Focus.
from a Quest or Quest Pro.
But do you have to deal with the Meta software?
No, this has nothing to do with Meta. This is, gotcha.
But it's not like the Focus 2. It's something else.
It's something else.
Yeah.
But it is like, it's XR2, it's pancake lenses, like it's basically functionally equivalent to Quest Pro. Just has HTC's logo on it and slightly different design. I don't know, we'll see. It could be cool.
Well, that's what people kind of said about the Focus.
Yeah. People who had it on said it's lighter than the Quest Pro, so it's got that going for it. It does have like a cable can disconnect from it and some other things. You can, yeah, so the battery that's on the back can come off completely. And then you can plug it in. It uses the, their own 5-port.
Is that the same one in the Focus? Yes.
Yeah.
So nothing, okay. I did say, I got nothing.
Got nothing. This company was interesting. They basically are Panasonic for all practical purposes. So all of the weird Panasonic headsets you've seen like over the last few years were under this umbrella. So yeah, Shift All, I think. They're Japanese, and so they make weird stuff. Like when you see the rest of these slides, you'll see some weird stuff. So this is their like, remember the like weird steampunk glasses headset? That's kind of like, this is the evolution of that. So they have this, you know, it basically uses SteamVR tracking. It can do 1.0 and 2.0, and you bring your own controllers. The one on the left is showing the like SteamVR tracking module. This is going to be like $1,700 just for the headset, and they haven't announced what the business edition is going to cost yet. I don't know. They wanted to show it with and without the tracking module. I don't know, but they. The weird thing about this one, I think this is the one. I'll have to double check this, but it has an XR1 in it, but it's not a standalone headset. And it requires a computer that has an NVIDIA graphics card to use it. You cannot use it with an AMD graphics card at all. So those are weird requirements. I'm not sure why they decided to do that, but yeah, if you go on their website and you look through the hardware requirements for PC use, yeah, it only works on NVIDIA graphics cards. It requires a 20 series, 30 series, or 40 series NVIDIA card to operate it. So they also had these. I actually got to see these in person. I got to see the headset in person. They wouldn't let anyone put the headset on. There was like special people, like media people that were able to put it on, but they had like a headset version that like was on a stand and like you could just sit your face in, because those lenses can become opaque or transparent, so you could do like pass-through mode on it. And they had a demo that was specifically wired up just so you could like turn the lenses on and off. But it didn't actually function. It had no content. It was just like a demonstration of lenses turning completely opaque black and then turning transparent. Like maybe like 80% transparent or something. It was still like a dark color, because I'm assuming for AR they would still want to have a dark lens for that. But these were basically like designed so you can like flip them over, so you can make your hands accessible. So you could like pick up a soda can or something and like use it while the controller's blocking part of your hand, or like use a keyboard with it. So it was kind of interesting. I didn't get to test them, so I don't know how well they track. I don't know really anything about the functionality. There was a person who was basically wearing all of the Shift All products, had the muzzle, which I'll show in a slide, the headset, the controllers, and the full body tracking, and they were like puppeting a VR chat anime character. And that was like the extent of like, you know, showing all their products working together. It was kind of terrifying. But this was the other thing. This is like everywhere on the internet that when they announced this. It's $200. It basically goes over your mouth. It has a microphone in it and like a foam pad that absorbs the spit from.
Did you try that one?
I did not. I have a screenshot of the foam pad that you know, buffers the spit from your microphone. But I think the thought process is being that like if you're in a room with other people, you might be talking online, you might not want anyone to hear what you're saying. And so this is like a way to like mute it, right? It's like a 20 to 30 decibel drop, essentially, for putting this weird thing over your mouth. And it has this crazy like head strap with like angles and things like that to position it on the front of your face.
The head strap you had a picture of looks like my CPAP.
Yeah, it's got CPAP style, and you can see on the left the guy there. I don't know. Again, didn't try it. So, and then they had various versions of this motion capture system. Then the two previous ones before this were wired. So similar to like what we used for Global Game Jam, where we had, the perception neuron motion tracking, where you basically had a rig you put on that had wires. They have a version that does that, and they have a version now that's completely wireless, and it does 6 points of tracking. So it does chest, hip, knees, ankles, and then they have the potential to have upgraded expansions where they can track more things. $350, I think they said, shipping in June, pre-orders starting in February.
For 6 or for
For 6 points, yeah. 20 hours.
Did you charge each one separate?
If it's anything like, so the Perception Neuron Pro, which has wireless modules, they had like this case, and you just put all the sensors in and charge them all at the same time. I don't know on this one. They didn't go into a lot of details on that.
What does it talk to through what medium?
It's Bluetooth. So there's a control module that talks to, I think they said it supports, and I don't have a slide for that, but it supported Quest 2, Vive, like all the PC versions of everything, and then it did support Quest 2 specifically. Maybe Quest 1, or maybe not, now that Meta's decided it's not worthy. Kind of interesting. Again, this is a Japanese company, so they make a bunch of weird stuff. They make like a smart drink dispenser and a mirror that tells you if you've worn those clothes before you leave the house, so that you don't ruin your street cred with having a unique wardrobe for months. I don't know, a bunch of weird stuff like that. If you get bored, go to their website, shift all, and you see a bunch of weird Japanese technologies. I did not get to see the Varo XR3.
Were they on the floor or were they in a hotel?
They were not at the floor. They were at the Venetian. So they had, part of CES was at the Las Vegas Convention Center on all 4 wings. And then they had basically a set of smaller venues that were just in a couple different hotels. And those were just like a room that they rented. And you scheduled ahead of time to go there, and you got like a demo. And so Varo basically decided to do that in lieu of being on the main floor. And so it was like 120,000 people all like driving around. It took me an hour the first day to get from the hotel to the convention center, because it's like every cab in Las Vegas was basically driving, back and forth from every hotel.
Why don't you take a Tesla to?
So that went from wherever it was, I can't remember what specific casino, and it went to CES South. So that's where like BMW and Google had their booths, but that was really the opposite direction of where the Varo was, and also Leia, who makes light field screens. They were also at. Those are the 2 that I wanted to see. I didn't get to see those, but I did see the Pimax. I didn't put anything on my head. They were showing off the Crystal and the Portal. I was super underwhelmed by the Portal, because it's basically like Google VR cardboard. You insert it into like this, flimsy headset. Basically, it's basically if you took a switch and stuck that module into a headset bracket. And there was 2 different versions. Like one was slightly wider, so it had like a bigger field of view, but it was sort of like, It wasn't my idea of good VR. So it was, but I'm sure there's a target market for it. But B-Haptics was there. They were showing off Tac Glove, which I think is one of their new products. I was interested in the demo, but again, it's something you put on your body, and I didn't want to mess around with testing that kind of stuff. It was pretty neat, the tracking, or the lack thereof, I guess. It has finger tracking and like haptics. So you can it's the kind of tracking that I've usually seen in VR gloves, where it's basically just like the vibration motor from a phone on the tip of your finger, and like it pulses when you like get near stuff. So it's not like good haptics, I guess, but it's something, right? And then Leia was the other one that I wanted to see. We have a bunch of devices. I think REM 5 has a bunch. They were showing their 15-inch light field monitor, which is basically glassesless 3D. So it's like a display you can look at. has a camera in it that does head tracking. So basically, when you look at it, it can move the virtual camera inside of whatever your engine is. So they have a Unity SDK for it. It's a, what do you call it, lenticular screen. So there's basically a bunch of images all drawn, and then there's a lens over top of it. And depending on the angle you look at, you see different versions of the frames. I think like the Android version does 4. So there's 4 individual frames. And the new screen, I think, does 6 or 9. But it has the extra advantage that because of the head tracking, it can re-render frames so that they're in an optimal position for when you move to that angle. So it actually makes the 3D look way more 3D. It's actually super impressive. But Sony had one too, and I got to see that one, and that one was actually super good. Sony. This was their display, the spatial reality display. They had it, I believe, at CES last year. There actually wasn't no CES last year, but it was like 2 CESs ago. They had a 15-inch screen. So this year they were showing a 27-inch screen. And they had like 20 of them lined up in a big row, and basically as soon as it was open, you could walk up and take a look at the content on it. It had like about a 60-second, reel of real-time 3D content that played through. And I was a little skeptical on the angle. I was like, why are they doing that? Like, why wouldn't it be like a normal screen? Because like all the Leia screens are straight up and down. But like one of the examples that sold me was like, it was like a soccer game. And when you were looking at that angle, like you could see like up into the bleachers, and like it actually made the 3D feel like it came more out of the screen, because that oblique angle actually was a benefit to like seeing depth in to the screen. So it was actually really, really cool. The 15-inch version of this, I think, is $5,000, and they haven't announced what the pricing is for this one. But I'm assuming it's twice the size, twice the price. But we'll see. They sent me a letter asking me if I want to buy one, and I said yes, but I haven't made a commitment.
We want you to buy it.
PSVR was there. Sony was like the bar for cleaning VR headsets. Like they had the UV chamber, they were wiping them down in between. Unfortunately, it was an ordeal to get a demo. Every day at 6 a.m. there was a website that opened up. You had to go there in a mad rush, try and get a spot. And if you didn't get one, then you had to wait till the next day. And so there was, at least the first 3 days of CES, you could not just walk up and do a demo. Sunday was the exception. It was completely dead. There were 3 different ones that had no one in it. I walked up and I was able to get a demo. So they just only had Horizon Zero on there, and it was a little boring because like it felt like a 20-minute tutorial to just like get to content where you could control anything, and then you got like a few minutes of time after that, and you had to like calibrate your eyes and like do all the setup for everything, and then you got thrown in a boat, and it was just like, I've been in a boat before in VR. Like I just want, is there a button to skip this and go straight to combat? And so they didn't let us do that. But it was good. The controller haptics are awesome. Supposedly there's haptics in the head pad. I didn't feel anything. I don't know if like the content that they demoed didn't maybe use it, or maybe the build didn't support it. But supposedly there's haptic sensors on the forehead pad that can like pulse, like when the character's low on health, it pulses their heartbeat so that you get an extra sensation along with the content. It'll be interesting to see. I think B Haptics has a head thing too for their VR headsets, and I've never used. I've used that one. What do you think of it? Is it a gimmick or? All right. RJ doesn't like it. Probably not good. This was the coolest thing. This is not XR related specifically, but this was the coolest thing at the Sony booth, maybe all of CES. A week before CES, Sony paid SpaceX to launch this satellite into space. And it's got a Sony camera in it. And they're rolling out this service called StarSphere. They haven't said what it's going to cost, but they said they're trying to make it affordable for like college students and like amateur photographers and things like that. But basically, you sign up and you request to take photography of the Earth at a specific point. And then they schedule out ahead of time like a path where this camera's gonna fly over that part of the Earth, and they tell you when it's gonna be there. And then you get to log into your account, and you get to like zoom in and take photography. And then when it crosses back over the base station that receives the imagery, it gets sent to you, electronically. And then they also are allowing you to have copyright of all of the photos that you take. So once you take a photo, it's yours. You can resell it. It's super amazing. And basically, so they had like these screens set up. They had like a touch surface demo that like let you control the satellite to kind of get an idea of, it was all fake, but it was like an idea of like what the interface is going to be like to control it. And that's the actual satellite. They had a bunch of documentation. I have a photo of the card that like explains like the propulsion system and all the stuff that they can use to steer it, but it was pretty amazing. And I think they said it was like going to be like 2 or 3 weeks after CES that they were going to start rolling out the website. So we'll have to check it out and see where things sit. But apparently it uses compressed water or something like that, like water vapor to steer. So like jets water vapor into space to like reorient itself. I don't know. So it has like a specific lifetime. So I'm assuming that like at a certain point they're going to crash it into Earth and they're going to launch another one. So whatever that window, so it's optimized for some lifetime basically to cover the expense of putting it into space. I'm assuming, but it was super interesting. They had this terribly named car. I don't know where they came up with this name, but it's terrible. I'm not even gonna say it out of just outrage. But basically, Sony and Honda made a car, and they should have called it the PlayStation car. I don't know why they didn't. And it's like you can tell it's designed by Honda because it's not the prettiest car in the world. It could have been way better. It does have an amazing interior. And again, it's a prototype car, so it probably is all smoke and mirrors. But supposedly the computer that controls it is basically the equivalent in performance as a PlayStation 5. So the thought is that you'd be able to play your PS5 games in your car, which sounds awesome to me. I don't know. White, I think, was an interesting decision for interior color, but
Why does a car need to have the performance of the PS5?
because there's this weird trend that cars are going to drive themselves and humans are going to need entertainment.
So you can play Forza, dummy.
So there's this trend that the car is going to be so good at driving itself that the humans are going to need something to do. So they're trying to put infotainment into all the cars, and that was a trend. Like BMW was doing it, Mercedes was doing it, and all the big car brands were there. Kia was doing it. It was interesting. And so in lieu of, like, I think Sony just decided they wanted to make a car, and they decided that maybe they don't have the chops to like do the whole thing. So they partnered with Honda, who's pro at making mediocre-looking cars, and they got a mediocre-looking car that has an amazing entertainment system. So that's my opinion. Sticking to that one. But BMW was there. Their take on this was bizarre. For those who don't know, I'm famously a BMW fanboy, and I've had multiple BMWs, and I love them, but I don't know what they're thinking. So they called it the iVision D, and again, we won't even go into that. Like, I don't even care where that name came from. I agree. I think it's dumb, but that's my opinion. They did a version of this a few years ago, but this one is basically like e-ink screens glued onto every surface of the outside of the vehicle. And so then they built a control system, so it could change between 32 colors. And every screen panel is a screen, and so it could have like text and graphics and animation. It could like do gradients and things, so like the car could like start at the front and be white and transition to green or something. And then like panels of the door would be like status of the car system, so it would tell you the charge level and like a big chunk of the door. Like there were no taillights because the taillights were just screens, so they could just turn on when they needed to. I don't know. It's kind of bizarre. But to add to the bizarreness, so there's an example where they kind of did a pattern, and because you can't actually just paint e-ink on anything, they literally took flexible screens. It's like tiles. It's like the surface of the car was like all these individual screen chunks it's glued on. I think there's 21 screen panels on each wheel, basically, to encompass that like round part. And then they made up this like weird story about how your car is going to be your best friend, and they made a movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger and David Hasselhoff with the car as a character talking about this like love story. If you get a chance, you can watch it. It's on YouTube. It's called The D Movie. I'm not going to turn it on because it's pretty long, but there's a point where David Hasselhoff drives in Kit and is like trying to console the protagonist of the love story. But yes, so, and BMW had their own building, which was super interesting.
Why did they do this?
Because smart cars need to be a love story.
This is a story about the future.
I'm not
about
gonna
love and friendship.
Yes, about love and friendship. I don't know. I've watched it multiple times. I still don't get it.
I love how your question has no answer.
So they were part of the like, vehicle technology kind of thing, and so they blinged out the whole car with screen technology. They are trying to say that there's eventually going to be some kind of artificial intelligence that's in the car that's your friend. I don't know. Seemed weird. I don't know. It's e-ink. The outside is e-ink, so the screen refresh is actually kind of slow. Like you can't do video on it, but it would just kind of like slowly blend between colors. And they apparently got asked all the time if they were worried about people robbing banks and then changing the color of the car, so they tried to get away. And they said they just laughed about it all the time, and it wasn't really a problem they were considering a solution to. So.
No, we track your position.
Of course, if they can afford this car, they won't be robbing banks.
You know where you are.
So did you say how many total screens are there?
I don't know how many are in the entire car. There's like 20 per wheel. Like each side is like 15 or 20, and then like the roof, and then like there's the dash is like a screen, and the rear's bumper's a screen, like a bunch of screens.
Is it waterproof?
I don't think so. There's a video on their website on the making of it where they show like what they had to do to the car to like get the screens on it, and I'm assuming there's like a bunch of like wiring behind the scenes that's connecting all these screens to something. It seems like a nightmare, but it was more like a proof of concept. It's not something that they're going to ever sell. Like the closest thing I've seen to that technology is electrostatic paint, where they can kind of hide a pattern in the paint and reveal it when they charge it with electricity. And that's kind of simple because you just need like electrode connections to just like send current through the paint, essentially, in certain spots. Whereas this is like every screen is an individual screen, and it has to have something connected to it to be able to draw pixels.
You couldn't relate to it at all because you've never taken bezel of screens and had to stick them together.
I'd like to. There's just not any cost-effective ones other than LED video walls, and they cost a fortune. So.
They did that on Top Gear a few years ago, where they made an invisible car. It was all screens on the outside, and then cameras on the opposite side. And they just kind of drove through town, so it was like a big truck that you just saw what was on the other side.
I saw someone who did that with like a rain jacket. Like it had a camera on the front, screens in the back, and kind of tried to do that. And I've seen also the refractive one where they have like a shield.
Yes, yeah.
And it has like a Fresnel lens, and it kind of just like blends everything with all the light coming in, so it's hard to see. That's the closest I've seen. If you can do that to a car, then you just have lots of accidents. I mean, there's tons of other stuff there. This is kind of my pick of what is interesting on the XR side. I was a lot of the time in the automobile section, so it was like lots of car stuff and boats. EV boats are coming out now, so you're going to be able to have a giant battery pack in your boat and charge it with solar and drive it around on a lake with no gas.
Did Leia get a price on that 15-inch screen?
They did not, and they decided to not manufacture it themselves. So, or let me rephrase that. They're manufacturing it, but they're not marketing it as a product. So their ideal is that they're going to go to third parties like HP, you know, like, and sell. They're going to sell them on making a product, and then they'll manufacture the screen. Because I think the Android tablet version, they lost a lot of money on because they made it, manufactured it, had to sell it, had to drop the price 50%, and then they sold them on Amazon for like $200 a pop or something. So they don't want to do that again, and instead they want someone else to take the risk and just pay them to make the screens.
Did they talk anything about like, making them larger?
Um,
They got a lot of hype on Twitter about the, you know.
Yeah, they have a 27-inch screen coming. The 15.6 is available for partners, and this 27-inch one is coming soon on their website. The Sony one was 27, and that's a nice size. It was.
Yeah.
It is though a little weird to like look down at it. Like I'm thinking like trade show uses and things like that.
What is that? The AR one we demoed here on the pad. Oh, the Tilt 5. Tilt 5, yeah. Where you lift the back edge up and you can see into the world. So it's kind of like when you're describing that.
Yeah, and they kind of did some clever things to kind of keep the screen in there, and but it did feel somewhat like things were jumping out of it. So it was totally because of the angle. They had like a product demo. They had like a shoe and a watch that flew apart, and they had like some like game graphics, like you know Unreal Engine kind of demos of stuff, and then they had like sports examples, like a menagerie of things, and it was all pretty good. So.
Thanks, Matt.
Yep.
I'll take that off your shirt. Excellent. Yeah, in terms of the possibly relevant stuff, the Vive XR Elite, I know Mark bought one for evaluation, so we'll force him to come talk about it. And I'm backer number 60 on the Lynx. What is the name of the Lynx headset? It's like R1, yeah. They've been so focused on manufacturing that they've shirked a little bit on the communication thing. The last project update on Kickstarter came from a backer who asked questions on the Discord and then pasted it back onto Kickstarter for them. So they're a little behind with their demos and their manufacturing stuff, but they do have stacks of headsets in France where they're based, stacking up. So looking forward to that. All right, next up is RJ. Come on down. So this can click, tap, but it's hard to drag. You might want to use the mouse if you want to do that.
Just space, do it.
Mm-hmm.
We'll find out.
We'll do like F5, and an F11 for luck, and another F5 for more luck. I want to play.
Click on slideshow.
Look at you. Clip that somewhere.
Which way does it face? This way?
Yep.
Perfect.
Test.
You good?
Looks good in the stream. Take it away, RJ.
Right, a little shorter, sorry. Okay, so I got a lot less slides than Matt, so I'll try to do a lot more talking to make up for it. All right, so kind of just did a basic theme of just putting a project on App Lab. So I guess quickly, just a show of hands, how many of you guys out there have heard of App Lab?
Heard about it?
Yeah. Okay. And then how many of you guys have actually tried a game from App Lab? Okay, very similar number. Awesome.
How many have attempted to publish?
How much are just using it as distribution?
We've used it for distribution.
Without.
I did attempt at publishing, and I got a couple of technical notes back, and we were like, nah.
That's fair. All right, so then this will be a superfluous for a few of you, at least for like half of it, but I'll try to make as much of it apply to everybody as possible. So for anybody out there who doesn't know what App Lab is it is basically an app store, but worse. So So basically, it is the hidden store for Oculus, for the Oculus Quest headsets specifically. So basically, you can go to the Oculus app, and you can actually search for App Lab games if you type the name in exactly in the search results. And even then, if your game has a very simple name, like the very popular App Lab game Grab, you will still get, a couple dozen results before the game that's actually titled Grab. And you will scroll to the very bottom, and you will see this. You won't even see the preview for the app. You will just see a big warning that says, this app may be experimental. You click on View App, and then it will show you the listing for that app. And then when you click on it, you get this big warning that tells you that it's very experimental, hasn't gone through the whole review process and everything. So, like I said, it's like a regular store, but worse. There's no visibility on the store. You don't get put into the categories of like most popular or like, best multiplayer games, anything like that. It's very much delisted kind of sort of thing. But you still pay the full 30% fee on any sales you make. So, full price, less features. But why would you do that? It sounds horrible. And so I'm going to go over a few of the reasons why. So one of the biggest reasons is there are ways to get your app seen. Third-party aggregators like SideQuest, which has been popular since the very beginning of Quest, for basically giving people a library of apps they can sideload onto their Quest headsets. And so, very early on, SideQuest proved that even if something's not listed on the official store, it can get a lot of eyeballs and a lot of players. So when they first released App Lab, I think it was like 2 years ago now, like almost 2 years, SideQuest quickly adapted to basically become an aggregator for App Lab store links. So basically, you could list your store link in there, put a bunch of marketing data in there, and when people went to SideQuest for sideloadable apps, they could also see App Lab apps. And they'd be able to click on that link, it would take them straight to that store page, and they'd be able to download or buy your app. But they're not the only ones out there. There's a couple. The first one you see, if you literally Google Oculus or Quest App Lab, you'll probably see one that's literally called Oculus App Lab, which I'm sure Meta loves so much. But it's just a huge list of apps that shows like their ratings, trending, different categories and stuff like that. Another one called App Lab DB, same thing. And the best part about these two is that it's totally automatic. They basically scrape the new games coming in on App Lab. I don't know the total process of how they do that, but even if you don't make a listing for your app or game, it'll show up on one of these websites. So, yep. Oh yeah. So a lot of that is done automatically. So even if you don't go through the process of actually setting up your own SideQuest listing, you can still get eyeballs from these websites, and they're very popular. They get a lot of views, a lot of eyeballs. And there are some App Lab success stories. Of course, Gorilla Tag, kind of runaway viral hit. I'm not saying every App Lab game is going to be Gorilla Tag successful, but it is a great proof that just because an app started on a terrible version of an app store doesn't mean it can't be very popular and make millions of dollars, which is the case for all three of these examples actually. Sport Mode is like a one-time purchase game. It's like $10, or it used to be. I think it's $15 now. They've already cracked the $1 million mark. Gym Class is another free-to-play with in-app purchases. And I know they cracked like $1 million in sales pretty early on, but they also are very heavy in like the investment game. And I think they just got like a Series A or B or C, whatever those things are, from the Google venture fund or whatever for like $5 million or something like that. So there are apps that go on this crappy store that are proof that success can be found there. But almost more importantly is they prove that a lot of people actually download App Lab games. It's not like a tiny thing. It's not where maybe like 10,000 people a month use it. There are thousands to millions of people out there downloading and trying out App Lab games. So the market is there. Another reason to do it is to prove yourself to other platforms. So anyone out there that's mentioned that you published to App Lab, has anyone gone from there and ported to any of these platforms up there? Yeah. Well, if that's something that interests you, that's kind of what these platform holders are looking for. They're looking for a listing on App Lab to prove that you went through the whole process of actually publishing it, but they also kind of judge it for terms of success. So if they see you got a few thousand downloads on a neat app, you can reach out to their developer relations people, and chances are they'd be interested in talking to you about paying you to port your game to their platforms. I can tell you from personal experience that for Pico and Vive, they've simplified that process massively since the early days. Like, their SDKs are a lot more streamlined. They're still not amazing or as easy as the Oculus SDK is, but especially for like very small teams or solo developers out there, it's a great side hustle. It's a great side gig to make some extra money, especially if it's like a really small project you worked on and just got some kind of runaway success from TikTok or something. They pay up to, some of these pay up to like $10,000 for porting fees for what's like, maybe a 2 to 3 week gig. So for a lot of the individuals out there, that'd be more than worth it, in my opinion.
What's that top one?
I'm not going to try to pronounce it because I know I think it's a key, but you're supposed to say the Q with a little ch on it, I think. Aichi? But they're cool guys.
What headset is that?
That is the Dream. I don't know. They sent me like 3 headsets, like for testing like a multiplayer thing. I only needed one, but I appreciate it.
Is it like similar to a Quest 2 or something?
Very similar to a Quest 2. I'd say probably the most direct comparison is probably the Pico Neo 3. The Dream headset is basically just a Neo 3 with a different coloration on it, and looks a lot like a Quest also, just like the Neo 3 did. But similar thing, it's an Android-based headset. Their SDK is a little more kind of weird, but it's workable. It's not that big of a deal. But they pay a decent porting fee, so it's worth it for, like I said, for the smaller people out there, for smaller teams that need some extra income or something to kind of keep afloat for a bit. This can help. So if you are thinking of making an App Lab game, there are some considerations to make on the technical side and just kind of the content side. So very first thing, if you're out there just making an app for internal use, for professional use, for commercial things, and you've been running in mono the entire time and have no intention of switching over to IL2 CPP, then that might be an issue. Like if you have something that breaks when you switch that backend, you're not going to be able to upload to App Lab. It'll literally give you a warning that it's 64-bit required. So you do want to keep that in mind. So if you have something that like a certain plugin or something special you do for your app, you won't be able to upload the binary for that at all. It'll kick you out. Performance, this is one for anybody out there who's actually tried App Lab games. They already know it's very lenient. They do ask for like 72 FPS, like at least, but from my experience, they don't actually test that too hard. Like, so if you have some dips in here, especially like in multiplayer games when there's like a few extra players on screen or whatever, they're not really going to care as long as it's kind of consistently not horrible. You can get away with it performance-wise, but you can't just put something that's like 45 FPS up there. They will knock you for that. Another thing is just watch out for permissions in the manifest file, especially for like Unity. I know that's like a lot of it's automatic. It kind of takes it from any manifest sources you have in the project files. So just keep an eye on that. If you have any plugins that like to add some rogue permissions in there randomly, that can mess with your submission process because they will kick you for that. They'll be like, hey, like you're asking for a permission in the manifest. It's not necessary. Remove it or else. And then one other small thing is SideQuest has put out like a little post, like a little blog thing saying, please, no more Gorilla Tag clones. Like, they're pretty lenient on this where like, if you add something to it, like at least one more feature to make it unique, they don't seem to care. But if it's just straight up like, a bird instead of a monkey, like everything else is just exactly like Gorilla Tag, then they're gonna get ticked. So just be careful for that. Yep.
Can you exclude Quest 1 yet?
Officially, no. I will say I have not, personally spoken to any App Lab developers who've published recently who even tested on Quest 1. So I've heard of people who have like published something, a Quest 1 user was like, hey, the performance on this sucks, and they're like, oh, I'm sorry.
If you had to launch on Quest 1, you could just like detect the Quest 1 and like lower the render scale and probably get 72 frames per second.
That would work.
Didn't they just discontinue the Quest 1?
For a lot of, they said a date.
They did, but there's no official like word for App Lab developers if they can exclude that yet. But official store developers can.
I think they said in the drop dead date, no more SDK functionality going forward, for sure. And then there's official, basically no more.
Can you guys reiterate it? This one went over my head.
Quest 1, they announced the sunset
Okay.
support for Quest 1 devices.
For the SDK, it's
So they're no longer supported on the SDK side going forward. It's not going to get updates at a certain point. Maybe even the last update was the last update.
They're cutting off some social features from
Yeah.
the apps as well.
Certain
Yep.
games are starting to drop support as well.
I picked up on the fact that a bunch of games sort of dropped support, but this is, you think Meta's doing it?
Meta.
Yeah.
Yeah, gotcha.
Which, for any developers out there that are like worried about that for any reason, from people that I've talked to, like on developer Discord servers who have like games that are on the store, like the actual store, they say it's like less than 2% of their users are Quest 1 users. So you're not going to be cutting like a huge portion of your market if that happens, but it is, something to like keep in mind. Like, hey, like maybe there's a handful out there that like, be useful to keep the performance nice and smooth. So the next thing is to actually make your app, to make your game, whatever you want to make. These are just some kind of small tips I've had. I've made like 8 or 9 different just random small VR games, most of them for mobile VR over the last 6 years, since what we figured out earlier, 6 years now, doing mobile VR stuff. My tips are, get yourself in the community so you can actually hear what people want, because they're very vocal, like in the comments sections, on social media. Like people say like the games that they want, and the ideas tend to float to the top. They're not all great. You're going to see gorilla tag with guns a lot, so not every idea is golden, but it's a good idea to keep an eye out. People are telling you what they want to play, so it would be smart to make something people actually want to play. Another thing, just personally, is I say like what makes the VR part of it fun. Like that Grid Legends racing game that just came out to the official store like a week ago. It was like a port of like their mobile thing or whatever. It's a racing game, but you use the control stick on your controller to steer and drive and do anything. There's 0 motion controls whatsoever. So the VR part of that version of the game is just being able to turn your head around and look out the car window. So I say, if you're making a VR game, try to make it VR. Try to make it something unique to that input that either affects the design of it or makes it fun. This isn't a necessity. Just something I kind of put out there as a recommendation. And then I think an important part of it is, you're never going to finish it if you don't like it. Make a game that like you like to play. So like if you test it and you find yourself lost in it for like 10 minutes or something, like actually going through the game loop, then you might actually like it. If it's something where you test it, you immediately put it back down, just go to the next task item, then maybe the idea isn't that interesting, or maybe you pass off to somebody else to see if they like it. And then this big stupid robot, I think I've done like 3 different presentations now where I put the quote from him in here from the 2005 animated movie Robots is see a need, fill a need. And this just kind of goes back to what the community is asking for. Like if people are saying that they see this, they want this, then ask yourself what's fun about that and try to make it. I put my kind of thumbnail for my game Firezone up there because that's kind of how I went through for this, is that there's already a bunch of shooters in VR. I'm not dumb, I know that. So when I kind of set out to make one, I knew there was something that needed to be unique to it. And that's, people were kind of interested in something more like Battlefield for VR, where there's a focus on vehicular combat, on the more kind of chaotic nature of the Battlefield shooting games. So that's kind of what I set out to do, is I was like, hey, like for at least the Quest store for Quest games, there really isn't anything out there that lets you, jump in a helicopter with 3 buddies and fly across the map dropping RPGs on people.
Is that an example where maybe it wouldn't get approved for the App Store, the big App Store, because of the vehicles?
Oh, you think? I don't know. I've seen these days like they don't seem to care as much about like comfort things as like they recommend you try to add comfort things. But I actually went through the updated Oculus VRCs actually for this presentation really quick. And one of the things I ran into is that they've basically, even for official store apps, they've knocked out all of the comfort VRCs down to recommended instead of required. So there's, so for like the comfort VRCs, like on Oculus for like the checklist for an app to be released, they've reduced basically all of the comfort things down to recommended instead of required. So where it used to be, there were certain things required, like you're not allowed to do this with head motion, you're not allowed to do this with this like certain motion. They've cut it all down from like it's a requirement to do that to recommended, meaning you could do whatever kind of goofy, high intense motion stuff you want to. Exactly. It's like the success of Gorilla Tag kind of proves that, like, especially this younger generation. And I even did a public poll on like my Discord server I run for my games. It's got like 15,000 people in it. A lot of them are kind of younger kids from TikTok. And I literally just tagged everyone. I said, hey, for people out there who use artificial rotation, for example, in games, do you prefer snap rotation or smooth rotation? And so just quickly, everybody here in this room, if you prefer snap rotation, raise your hand. If you prefer smooth rotation, raise your hand. Exactly. In my Discord server, it was 354 votes for smooth and 32 for snap.
I saw that. That surprised me big time.
Yeah. Yep.
When you say smooth, do you mean like joystick or like?
Yeah, like you use the joystick, yeah.
Like when you move the joystick, like the world turns underneath you.
But both of them are.
That's fair, yeah. Oh, exactly. So like when I'm talking about comfort, like the younger generation of gamers, like they've got, it's not just like they have an iron stomach for anything. It's like they're used to playing like Apex Legends and Fortnite, like things that are extreme intense motion. And so that's just my personal theory onto like why they don't care or why they prefer smooth. But I just want to let you guys out there know that that's like the younger players, like the huge market value, the people who made Gorilla Tag what was it? Was it 26 million or 36 million that they revealed? 26? That sounds right.
I think it's all the old people started on screens this big, and now like kids probably have like 85-inch screens, and like they're used to like getting their Xbox, and the whole world's like only this.
Right.
So like they're just trained into it.
That would make sense too, exactly. So just something to keep in mind. Don't let comfort stop you, but also please keep it in mind. It's still nice to have the options in there. That's why like the whole snap versus smooth thing that was going on the VR Twitter sphere like a week ago, it's like the best thing is to just have both. Just do both if that's like something you need for your game, is my personal preference. But back to the slide. Once you've made a game, then you need to market it. And I recommend doing this marketing part long before you've even submitted it to the App Lab phase for approval. And I'm talking like, do beta tests with people in Discord servers, get video clips, like showing off like the cool juicy stuff like as soon as possible. In my experience, the biggest kind of social media websites to do that on, and I've talked about this probably before, Reddit is one of the biggest ones. They have a huge community with hundreds of thousands of users, literally just for Oculus Quest. And so that's a very passionate community. They've got a lot of their own tastes for certain things, but they seem to be pretty open-minded about what you put out there. They just love to see new stuff. Yep.
So when you're beta testing that stuff, you're doing it as side quests?
Usually side quests like at first, but then I like to move to like private alpha testing pretty quick because it's easier for me to manage, because then I can just push out an update on the Oculus dashboard and everybody. Exactly, yeah, because when you do that, especially with testing, it's so hard to keep people going from like iteration to iteration, because it's like, oh hey, join the newest test. It's like, hey, I did, it's not working. It's like, oh yeah, because you didn't sideload the newest APK yet. Here, download this 1.5 gig new APK and sideload it. Whereas like doing the alpha channel, you're limited to like 100 players per channel, and you only get a release channel, an alpha channel, and a beta channel with App Lab. So it's like limits it to like 300 people. But for testing purposes, especially for alpha, that's usually not a big deal, especially if you get players that you can agree to consistently come online, and you're like, not that far from release.
So that's the part I was blanking on. That's all internal to App Lab. I mean, the alpha channel beta testing stuff.
Yeah, that's all done through.
Sweet, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's awesome. So like, yeah, all you need to do is you need to take down a person's email, which in my experience, especially with these TikTok kids, you get a lot of emails that are like clearly their moms, where it's like Christina Anderson, like 1985 at hotmail.com. And it's like, yeah, I don't think the Braden who found me through TikTok, I don't think that's actually his email. But yeah, so you figure out kids, you know, actually their reading comprehension for what email they need to use for that kind of thing could be kind of low. So there used to be a website, it was like secure.oculus, like my profile. You would just send that link out, tell the kids, hey, click on here, this will show you the email address you need to give me, and then they'd send that to you. You can add them to the alpha channel, and boom, the game downloads to their library on their headset, no sideloading required. So that's the easiest way to do it with testers. However, you know, like I said, the TikTok kids, sometimes they just give you whatever email they want to without realizing it's not connected to their account. And when you try to copy and paste hundreds of emails at a time, if there's one email wrong in there, it doesn't tell you, so you can't copy and paste the whole list into the alpha channel, and it becomes a whole thing. So like, I came up with a form that was like, go to secure.oculus.com, look at this email, copy and paste it. Don't type it yourself, copy and paste it because I don't trust you. And I did that 3 times in a row on this giant Google form on a Discord server, and it helped a little bit. And then just in like the last couple of months, actually, Oculus broke that link, so you can't use that anymore. There's a new one, but I forget what it is. I haven't typed it in yet. But you know, for anyone doing, you know, large-scale alpha testing like that, I do recommend doing Google Forms and telling people to copy and paste that. You cannot trust people to type their own email address. But back to the Reddit users, hundreds of thousands of them, very passionate. The nice thing with a Reddit post is it tends to kind of cook throughout the day. So you post it like sometime like in the morning or afternoon, and then it'll get some views and start coming up the hot page. And so a lot of people will come to the Oculus Quest subreddit specifically looking for new games and updates and stuff, and they'll see it rising, so they'll get interest in it. So you can get like tens of thousands of eyeballs, even just like on some early prototype footage, very easily that way. So Reddit's a big one still these days. And the nice thing with Reddit is that you can post your own comment right underneath your post right away when you post it and say, hey guys, come here to my Discord server if you're interested in more. So Reddit's always a good one. Twitter I have on there. It's not the greatest for actually getting to users. I think a lot of people who have tried marketing on Twitter know that like you're usually just reaching other game devs. But luckily in the VR space, historically, it's, you know, half the consumers were developers anyways, so that was kind of your audience already. But now we're getting into a day and age where all your consumers are not. We're actually finally hitting a stage in VR where a lot of consumers are just consumers. They're not enthusiasts, they're not developers, they're not tech nerds. They're like, I got an Oculus for Christmas, what are the new games out there? Which is what brings us to TikTok, which is a new addition to this slide since the last time I talked about this stuff. TikTok is absolutely massive in terms of reach for VR consumers. I had a Discord server, like I talked about earlier, that I ran for a couple years up until the fall of 2021. And it had about 700 people, which is like a modest amount for like a Discord server for a couple random VR games. I was pretty happy with it. And then I started working on a new prototype for a game called Stabby. And so I started to do TikTok marketing. I started recording clips with some of the beta players, showing some of the cool stuff from it. And in the course of a month, my Discord server went from 700 members to 15,000. So, and a lot of people that coming from TikTok literally said, hey, I'm making a Discord account just to follow this. This is my first time with Discord, blah, blah, blah. Like, TikTok has absolutely massive reach and numbers, like, you know, hundreds of thousands to millions of views. So I would suggest using it wisely. You know, I know a lot of people personally have issues with TikTok. I don't blame you, like privacy concerns, you know, the way their algorithm works and, you know, basically tries to get kids addicted to it. I totally understand all the issues there. But if you are marketing a game and it is important to you to have an audience for that, I definitely think you need to be there. You need to be posting content. You need to be trying to get people to see your game. And as far as like actually marketing on TikTok goes or any of these other platforms, Just kind of in my experience for the last couple of games I've been working on, done an app lab, turned around. Researching timing on all these social media websites is great. There are websites out there that already have like all the best times for each day of the week for certain communities to post. So it's really important for stuff like Reddit and TikTok to be like, okay, what time of day should I post this? And then that's, where you get the best amount of eyeballs, the best kind of trending. So do your research on timing for posts. Trends, obviously, gorilla tag. If you're making a gorilla tag clone, and at least you add guns to it or something, you make it unique, you're following a trend, that tends to work out. It's not the most creatively fulfilling, but believe me, it gets eyeballs, it gets downloads. I think like the 7th most downloaded app on AppLab of all time, and that's talking like, over 2 million downloads, is a game called Capuchin that's, gorilla tag, but with a capuchin monkey, and that's it. So, following the trends can pay off. And then the last one I like to do is just memes. If you're kind of in the know with some of these social media sites, just cashing in on like the latest meme or trend can pay off. Like last year, a couple years ago now, I think, when that show Squid Game was popular on Netflix, that red light, green light kind of game they play, and it was very popular. So I tried to kind of cash in on that as quick as possible, and I did like a VR red light, green light game, and I got that to AppLab like as quick as possible. And that got like, I think the last time I checked, it was like over 250,000 downloads just on the crappy little red light, green light game, because it was capitalizing on a meme, capitalizing on this, trend that everyone was hopping on. And so doing that kind of brings us next specifically just to TikTok marketing. So how many of you guys out there use TikTok at all? All right, so not many. I don't blame you. As far as like social media content goes, it can be kind of barren, especially at first before you've kind of clocked in any views or likes. The content's can be very basic common denominators kind of stuff, like while it's trying to learn you still. But once it does learn you, which again is very scary, and I don't blame people for not being interested in that, it really picks up. You really start to see content that you like, things that interest you. Like it learns you very quickly. So using it for marketing, you are reaching millions and millions of teenagers that are interested in VR, that are already interested in downloading AppLab games. The algorithm knows that. So you need to cash in on that. So these kids going through TikTok, they're seeing the games, but they're also seeing all their other regular stuff too. So they're seeing the trending sounds on TikTok. So for anyone that doesn't use TikTok, a sound is basically a bit from a song or a bit of audio from like a movie or a TV show or even another TikTok. And they basically put their own video on top of that, either lip syncing or memes that go along with the audio, stuff like that. So TikTok has a section when you're making videos for it that tells you what the trending sounds are, what the popular sounds are. So go through that, like go through the content for that, see what memes are catching on, what people think is funny, what people think is interesting, and push on that. Use those sounds, try to make it match like the gameplay. Especially, I think an advantage we have as VR developers is that our gameplay can seem more human and natural, so your motions can also, so you can like do a dance that matches along with the song, or mime out a certain scene from a movie that matches the audio, stuff like that. So capitalize on the popular sounds. Editing. This one, in my personal experience, is kind of important. So TikTok's algorithm is infamously fickle. It'll usually give one of your first like 4 or 5 videos a big boost to convince you that it is a platform where all of your videos can get hundreds of thousands of views like that easily. And the truth is that that's not the case. They want to keep you on the platform, making content for them so they can stick ads in between it. So the true trick to it is making content that seems like it was made specifically for TikTok. If you take a recording of gameplay that's like 30 seconds long of what you just think is the coolest thing, you don't put any extra songs in there, no extra editing or filters or anything, like my game looks this cool without any of TikTok's gadgets, I'm gonna put it out there. And chances are, unless it's one of your first 5 videos, it's gonna get nothing. It's gonna get maybe a few hundred views, maybe a few thousand. The trick is you need to make TikTok think that you are using their features, that you are just some regular content creator trying to use the app as is to make cool, trendy content that matches their sounds. So the trick is using their in-app editing tools. Even if you're just doing like a quick random filter, like a zoom in on like a headshot, like in a gun game or something, just some use of their features that makes it look like, you know, you're just another one of the people out there just trying to make cool content that makes them look better, then they tend to favor those videos a little bit more. So that kind of goes along with playing the algorithm too. So just hopping on those trends, hopping on those popular sounds, just whatever you can do to make your content relevant. You know, it's not enough to just post gameplay out there. You'll see popular TikToks with that out there, but that doesn't mean that that's actually what people want to see. That might be just TikTok, again, taking somebody else and trying to convince them to be hooked on the platform as a creator. I think one of the best examples, this is why I wish I probably put an actual TikTok video in there or something, is when I released my game Firezone on App Lab this last fall. Some of the videos I did where I did extensive editing, and I hopped on sounds and trends, did decently well. They got into like the tens of thousands of views. I was pretty happy with the numbers they had, the conversion of people actually coming to my Discord from them had. But there was a kid who hopped on a random like God of War trend where like Kratos like standing at the top of a cliff and he's like jumping off of it to the sound of Aerosmith's Dream On. And that's an actual meme, I'm not making that up, I swear. Some kid did that in Firezone. He like took a helicopter, like one of the tallest buildings, and jumped off of it, did like the slow-mo, did like the song or whatever, and that got 650,000 views. So when I say hop on those trends and like encourage your community where you can, I mean it. And so that's a great segue into the next part, which is about making a community. So how many people out there use Discord? Okay, so yeah, basically everybody. All right, and how many people have ever made their own Discord server? About half as much, okay. So one of the things with social media marketing is not just getting people to your game page, like your store page. It's creating a community around your game. And I know this is something I've probably talked about in previous talks, but I think especially here with something like TikTok being so fickle, it's important to take advantage of that as quickly and as often as possible. Now with TikTok, I've noticed they're very specific. They don't like you putting a link to Discord in the captions of your video. They don't like you putting it in the video itself. They don't like you putting it in the comment section of the video. The one place you can get away with it on TikTok without it kind of, you know, pushing your video to the side algorithm-wise is putting it in the bio of your TikTok account. So if you're focusing hard on TikTok marketing, that's something you really have to keep in mind, because otherwise they will nuke your videos. They will push them to the side, not get any eyeballs on them. But the important thing about Discord is not just using it for conversion, not getting people to you, but it's also actually fostering that community. So once you get people from other websites like Reddit, Twitter, and TikTok into your Discord server, you need to use that to your advantage. You need to do community announcements there. Anytime you do a new patch, do an announcement on there saying like, here's what I added to the game, here's what I added to the app. Make different channels. Obviously, you know, rules and regulations, kind of developer clips, stuff like that that like only you can post in is super important, but also things the community can participate in, like either discussion about specific apps and games, off-topic discussions for random memes and stuff. You need to make people feel like they kind of have a home there, like an old school like website forum where like you had different sections for different types of things, but you know, the actual forum itself was about a certain game like that. That's kind of what Discord is nowadays. And so it's in your best interest when marketing your game to try to push people to your Discord server, to bring them there, to make them feel like a part of the community. And probably what goes along almost most importantly is keeping that community. So it's not enough to just post announcements out there with updates. It's not enough to just swoop in every once in a while and be like, hey guys, you want to hear about this cool new thing, or post it. You need to actually keep people there. You need to make people want to stay there. So that isn't just about updating it often. It's about keeping it clean, keeping it as toxic-free as possible. If you have lots of people coming in and spamming slurs and like sexist things, like horrible stuff like on your server, and you just come through, like clean it up every once in a while, you're going to chase people out. People are going to leave in hordes. So, yep.
How do you keep up with 10,000 people doing that?
That's a good question.
Okay, sorry.
No, that's good. That's exactly what I'm getting
You
to.
can tell I belong to a couple communities.
Yeah.
They're much smaller than
Yeah. So one of the big tricks with that is using your community. What you'll find, especially with the Discord of like a decent size, is you'll find there are kind of power users, people who are on multiple Discord servers for other games, and people who spend all day there. And I mean that literally, like 24/7. They've got their finger on the pulse of like new games coming out. And the thing is, they want to help. These people want to be helping you. They want to keep it clean. They want that community to thrive. And they, have a itty bitty power trip where they want to feel important for it. So Discord has a feature called roles, where basically you assign people a role, and that gives them certain powers in your Discord server. Sometimes it means small things like giving people a timeout if they've spammed something too often, to full on like banning and kicking someone if they've like repeatedly broken the rules or said something really horrible. And like I said, there's people who want to do this for free just because they like your game or they want to feel like they're important people in your community. So look for those people, look for the helpers, for the people that want to keep it clean, that want to help you. And they will. You give them those powers, you tell them you appreciate them, maybe every once in a while throw them like a special like in-game bonus or something. Like for my game Fire Zone, anybody that's like a helper or a moderator, I usually give them like a bunch of like free in-game content or cosmetics. For like the moderators, which are like the highest ones or whatever, every once in a while I literally say like, hey, what's like a weird cool idea you have for the game? And I add it in there. Like when I was doing Stabby, there was a French kid, like a 14-year-old kid in France who's on Discord all the time. My wife knows because he's very, very active in there. He's a very humorous fellow. And I put in a baguette sword for him into Stabby. I was like, Vive la France, like this guy's awesome. Just stuff like that that makes your community feel like they're a part of it, but also rewarding the people that help you keep a handle on it, keep it not messy, like keep it clean. And so, there's always a certain level of intuition, like for the people you pick for those helper roles, but it's just a matter of, logging in every day, taking a look, seeing like, hey, like this stuff kind of slipped through, so maybe you need more helpers, or hey, like there's a power struggle between a couple moderators because like they think a rule should be this. You step in, settle some stuff. So it's not hands off by any means, but the people out there want to do good for you, and let them, because it just helps you in the long run. All right, and that is pretty much it. Any questions about the Discord stuff or anything else? Yeah.
RJ, I gotta say that your talks are some of the best talks that are ever here.
Well, thank you.
Holy crap! Give me a percentage of how much time you think you spend doing this versus coding. Because you just have these golden comments about this kind of shit.
Oh, thank you.
Like that question I just asked. And holy cow, that's gotta eat up a lot of time.
It does. I work from home. I'm certain I have undiagnosed ADHD or something. Truthfully, it's a lot of multitasking. I'm not kidding when I say like if I have Unity open and I'm making a new build, I know it's got like some new shaders in it or something. I know it's gonna take a few minutes. Alt tab, move over to Discord, handle some stuff, join some new communities, handle some moderator issues or handle some bans or kicks if need be. Like, it's just using that time as much as possible because.
I can't handle being a user on top of it. And the idea of moderating and then building a team to help moderate a 10,000 person server. Holy shit.
No, I mean,
that's just amazing.
at one point, I just had the moderators. I just had like 4 or 5 of them for like when it started to hit like the 10,000 mark, and that's when like my head started to kind of go under the water. I was like having to step in and like help often too, even with 4 or 5 moderators. And that's when one of the moderators said, "Hey, something I do in another server is I have people who are helpers, and they don't have the power to kick and ban, but they have the power to do timeouts and mute people so that they can't talk for like a day or something like that."
And your moderators know to see what the helpers are doing.
Yes.
You're doing a classic sort of Gantt chart of how you handle an organization. Oh, this is fascinating.
Exactly. Yeah. So like the moderators get like the special like they're the ones that ask for like, hey, what do you want in the game? And I put it in there for them because like I appreciate them because they do a lot of that management because Discord is their life. Whereas like the helpers are like, hey, like thanks for the help. Here's like a free key to the game, or here's like a free like in-game cosmetic or something. So like there's different ways to like make everybody feel like they're an important part of your community, and obviously different levels of that. But like as I said, there's people out there where Discord is their life. They want to do this for you. They want to feel powerful. I've literally seen kids get in fights where they're like, oh yeah, I'm a moderator of like 4 Discord servers. How many Discord servers you moderator of? It's a measuring contest.
RJ, can you talk a little bit about networking? Are you going to keep making network multiplayer? How do you like what you're doing?
How do you handle that as a popular game on that platform?
Yeah, so right now, Firezone, which I just released, just passed the 40,000 users mark. It is a free-to-play game. So it has 2 different versions of in-game monetization. One is kind of what's popular these days, known as a battle pass, which in my game I call a fire pass because against Firezone. And so what this is for people who don't know what a battle pass is it's basically when players play your game, they play matches, they have level progression. They get experience, they level up. So with a battle pass, there's certain in-game cosmetics that they unlock because they have the battle pass. So they're unlocking new levels, they're getting free content, but they're also seeing, hey, look at all this cool stuff I could be unlocking if I had the battle pass. And so for a lot of them, it's like, hey, like I already earned it. I already got to level 10, so I got like 3 new skins. All I need to do is pay this one-time $10 fee for the battle pass, and I have 3 new skins that I earned. And so that's the Fire Pass. I got that in there. It's a main kind of form of monetization for it. And then I also have an item shop where that's like individual cosmetics that they can buy for their characters just for straight up dollar amounts. They don't have to earn them, they just get them instantly. And so I have a good mix in there of like certain skins that have like new models or just new textures or new camos for their guns and stuff like that. So, and that has brought in more than enough like revenue to like pay for like the Photon servers to keep the game running. I think I've peaked at like maybe 139 CCU, so it's not like my servers are getting gorilla tag levels of flooded or anything, but it is going over that like 100 mark where it's like easier to like pay like a one-time thing for the whole year. But it's not by any means bleeding me. Like the revenue from the in-app purchases and stuff is paying for the servers and then some.
And which networking? Which servers?
I'm using Photon.
Is it the new, whatever the new Photon is called?
Nope, I'm not using Photon Fusion yet. I haven't dipped my toes in that quite yet. I'm just so familiar with like regular Photon 2. And I just, for my purposes at least, it's fine for now. But if I ever want to expand like, more game modes, more like kind of the classic battle royale sort of game mode, stuff like that, that's when I would probably need to look into Photon Fusion. But for now, just regular Photon's working for my purposes.
Does anyone here use Photon Fusion, like your stuff at all? Do you have an opinion on it compared to the old stuff?
It's a more modern version of the old system.
Is it just as easy to use?
Yeah, it's pretty much. I mean, they have like a guide that's like, if you use this before, it's this now. Like a lot of it is just refactoring namings of things. So that's like the hardest thing to wrap your head around. Is just like, where's this thing that I used to use? What's it called?
Does it seem just as stable? Because with the old stuff, that's like super battle tested. That's my only like apprehension of moving it.
It's been pretty good. It does a lot. It has new stuff that obviously, Photon 2 doesn't have. It does client-side prediction. It does its own data compression and stuff. So it's optimizing the data, whereas you have to do that yourself. And that's the thing where like if you're doing a multiplayer game, you don't optimize your data, you screw yourself.
Yeah. I do have a great example of that. This ties into the talk perfectly. So this ties into the whole popularity of AppLab itself, but then also careful network optimization. So there was a game that somebody released on AppLab called Monkey Mischief, which, if you can guess from the name, is another Gorilla Tag clone. This one, however, was made by a couple kids fresh, like not even out of high school yet. I'm pretty sure they were 17 when they published it. And it got like millions of players, like in the first month. It was nuts. And they were using Photon for networking. And they were not doing any optimizations whatsoever. So their first month, they got a nice $32,000 bill from Photon. And so they tried to call them, and they ignored the calls. They tried to email them, they ignored the emails. And finally, they said, pay the $32K now, or we're taking you to court and shutting you down. So these two kids freaked out, talked to their parents, who then got in contact with Photon, and Photon was basically like, all right, fine, but we're shutting you down and banning you from Photon forever. But yeah, so that's how popular AppLab is that you can get to an insane amount where like you didn't do great network compression, all of a sudden your data use is out the butt because there's so many people playing AppLab games that they flood the servers and make these poor kids owe $32,000.
Anyone have experience with both Photon and Normcore? Yeah. Comparisons, are they quite similar, quite different? Does Photon have the ability to have a server authority?
So with Photon, there's like, for authority, there's different ways to do that. Like, you basically can have, like, one of the users is basically the server. That's similar to what you can do with Normcore, right?
Yeah.
You can have dedicated like servers, basically, where you have a version of the game that's compiled specifically to be authentication and to run the game engine, basically, and it's headless. You have that running in the data center, and that's hosted on the Photon platform, basically. And then, let's see, there's one other one. But like, so depending on how you want to do it, it's like you just have the extra expense, basically, of needing to pay for your own networking power. And like, what's the Microsoft?
Azure.
PlayFab?
Yeah, PlayFab has Azure integration and it supports Photon, and so you can just spin up a Photon server on that and get the basically fires. And then if you need more equipment, you can just spin up multiple nodes, basically. So it's putting you in a situation where you're controlling the stuff. There's another option with Photon where you can buy licenses for having your own physical servers, and then you can set up basically like, you know, however many simultaneous users you're going to have, you can divide that between how many licenses per server you want. So you could basically just literally buy your physical hardware, throw it in on a network connection, and then just pay one-time licenses or monthly licenses, depending on what you want to do there. And have, depends how much control you want to have over hardware versus leasing your hardware.
Which there was a scenario last fall where Photon's voice servers or cloud servers went down, and you weren't able to use voice chat in games like Walkabout Mini Golf for like, I think it was like a day and a half. It wasn't down for long, but it's one of those examples of like, if you're running your own hardware, you don't have to worry about that.
And that's something that right now with Normcore you can't do. Like you're limited. Like they're running everything Google Cloud. And, like they can spin up a private instance for you if you pay them enough money.
Yeah.
But like you still don't get access directly to the software or the hardware. You're just using it as a service. Whereas Photon can get to the point where you have more control over like everything, like from all the way down to the network stack and all the way down to like physical server you can manage all yourself. It's like where do you want to jump in? And you can somewhat move back and forth between those things. Like you could start out using this, you know, per CPU servers that are just like running on their platform, and then you can transition to like running your own things over time.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think that at the core they do the same thing. It's just that again,
If you know one and wanted to learn the other, I would say it's pretty accessible.
Like a game jam.
Yeah. Right. Which is why I asked. Custom data is the story kind of similar.
if you run the headless versions, you can have custom code, server code. stuff that they're kind of rolling out, but like they used to have rooms. Rooms are depreciated.
Oh yeah, they just knocked that out now.
So now basically, and like if you look at their example for making a multiplayer thing, they literally use photon.
Yep.
So you're kind of, they're forcing everyone down that path just on their, by providing the examples to say this is the way we run things.
Yeah. Which, I mean, Photon has some like, Normcore has a few apps on the App Store that are like kind of proving that it's like a decent solution. But at this point, Photon, that's what Gorilla Tag runs. That's what Walkabout Mini Golf runs. I know VR Chat. I swore Rec Room did once upon a time, or was I that Mirror? Yeah.
At least at one point.
Yeah. So Photon's pretty.
We were talking to the team at Meta about Horizons. We asked them specifically what they use, and they said it's Horizon.
Yep.
So that's the one company that we were messing around with, and they said they're not using Photon.
Makes sense. What's it?
How many players simultaneously?
The most I've had so far, I already forgot the number, I'm sorry. It's like 137 online at once. As far as like the most, like they've logged in like one day, I think it was like 5,600. And then like monthly active users, it's like 25,000.
What about one match? What's the max?
Yeah, like
Oh, yeah, sorry, 16. So I'm pushing that Photon limit to its extremes.
Starts, like if there's more people, it just starts with a different.
Yeah.
I will to comment on the player room limit of 16 people per room. They don't technically enforce that, although it's in their license. You're not supposed to enforce it.
Exactly.
But you can get a lot more people into one room, and there's no restriction on it.
Yeah.
And I think that's, with Fusion, I think it's 200. Yeah. So, and that's as a result of optimization of the network stack, compression, client server-side prediction, just more advanced technologies in the network. Okay? So we hope you compress it somehow.
Which Photon is doing a good job of rolling out example projects for Fusion lately. Just in like the last year, they got like a battle royale 200-person example going. They've got multiple VR examples now for like specifically VR apps. So I think Fusion's definitely one of those things that's like worth learning about. Right now, there's so many like resources for just Pun for like Photon's Unity networking that it's so easy to just hop in, start making stuff right away. But Fusion's getting there too. It's got the examples. People are already putting like asset packs out there where you can just download, start messing around in Fusion right away. So I think Fusion's definitely worth learning. I just haven't taken the chance to yet myself.
Any other questions for RJ?
Thank you, RJ.
Yeah, thank you.
My pleasure.
Take that mic off your neck.
Oh, yeah.
What a great return to in-person VR HCI.
Very nice.
All three of you were great speakers.
I'll agree with two of those. Thanks everybody for coming. Thanks for watching on the stream. And we'll catch you next month, 4th Wednesday. Consider the Global Game Jam. Consider going to the postmortems if you do or don't go to the Game Jam. It's fun just to see all these rapid fire projects with super wacky themes that would never exist otherwise outside of a jam. So thanks for coming.